Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in Module 23, we'll be getting a lot of new gear, including this mythic stuff, all the way from head pieces to armor pieces, feet pieces, to even some rings down the bottom here, to a new shirt and pants setup, along with your neck and waist. Now, all of this stuff is all still open to change. These bonuses could be increased or decreased as the developers see fit throughout the testing period on the preview server. So just keep that in mind as I go over all of the best gear that, in my opinion, is going to be sought after for endgame DPS players. And you can pretty much see my setup right here, and this is what I will usually run with, at least on this build, where I'm running with an active companion and testing it out in certain content. There are certain areas in the game where it can be good, certain areas where it can be bad, but it can always be good to have a backup, have a build that can fit an active companion. Let's say you need to run the Black Death Scorpion in the Tiamat trial, then you could definitely make use of a build like this, and I think I will pretty soon. So let's go over exactly what gear you'll be wanting to go after in this new module. To help me explain, I've made a document where I go over and compare the different gear pieces that are going to be available, and also compare them against gear pieces that we currently have as well, and to show you essentially which is going to be the best to be using, either older gear that you can currently get in the game or some of this new gear. We can see right away on my character sheet for the head slot we're using this new mythic piece, and looking at the tooltip here you can see it's the Serenade hood, and it's essentially giving you exactly the same bonus, Butcher's Focus, as we've seen with the Goristro horns right here, which many of you will be currently using. And that's because it gives you up to a maximum of 10% of that critical strike, which is very useful, and it's one of the only headpieces that gives you the most offensive stats, so all around very good. There will be a second one, the Sharp Circlet of the Dragon Hunter, and essentially it will give you critical severity instead of critical strike, so pretty much identical, just a different stat. But right now we do have an excess of crit severity due to very easily obtained through 5% of the Flask of Potency, and then it will depend what ribcage you're using. And so that's the second piece. We go to our armor. You'll be wanting to directly upgrade that ribcage you got from Avernus to this tactful one. As we compare both of them there, the Bone Devil's ribcage gave us that 2.5% crit strike and crit severity, and this new tactful one gives us the exact same bonus. So all it is an item level increase, and in my opinion it's going to be a lot easier to obtain. You can alternatively get the Mighty Cuirass of the Dragon Hunter, and same like the ribcage, but it gives accuracy and combat advantage instead. So both of these armor pieces will give up to a total of 25% stats in total, all offensive stats, so very good for maxing out your damage potential. And if we look at, let's say, the damage formula, and we compare, let's say, using the ribcage that would give you accuracy and combat advantage, so that's when our stats would be capped, then you would be lacking on crit strike and crit severity. And if vice versa, you can see that here we have capped crit strike and crit severity, and the damage difference is less than 1%. It's about 0.58% difference in favor of the combat advantage and accuracy. Just keep that in mind, but normally you can sort out your build so that you're just stacking combat advantage, crit strike and crit severity anyway. We go and jump into combat with this dummy and get all of those stacks procced off on top of our gear pieces, and we can see that we can get our stats all pretty much nicely to 90% there we go, except you can see our accuracy because we're using that as essentially our dump stat. And there we have our nice setup of stats, and for me that's using the tactful leathers. Simply upgrade from the rib cage. And we go to the arm pieces then, and you can see on this build I am still using the wrist guards of participation. You can easily obtain that from in hardcore Voss when you just farm the first mini boss, and you could, yes indeed, go and use these two mythic arm pieces. However, I don't see them as good as using, let's say, the wrist guards of participation or the petrified covers which you would obtain from Masterwork, Sharandar Masterworks at that. So you should be able to buy them on the auction house at some point, or you can nag a crafter to get them for you. And essentially what they're doing is giving you 7,500 of an offensive stat, whether it be power or crit severity, whichever you need. And right now with my build I need the power, so that's using the wrist guards. And you can see the newer gear pieces like the superior crushers of the Dragon Hunter, all it will do is give you 5% power and defense. That's good for a mix of stats, but we're trying to deal damage. We're just maxing out our offensive stats. You can choose whatever you want to sacrifice to gain survivability, but I'm focusing on maximizing that damage potential, so capping all those stats. Maximum amount of offensive stats is the best way to go. The item level difference is very tiny. 325 is a 0.41% damage difference, and that's not going to make up the difference in the stats that you gain. And these superior crushers are simply an upgrade from the Arms of Last Resistance from Avernus, and the Mighty Van Braces are simply an upgrade from the Spike Defender Van Braces, and I don't generally like to run with them because all they will give you is up to a maximum of 5% damage bonus. Keep in mind, damage bonus you can see here is exact same as, let's say, power. Let's say I go down to 85% there, and I go down to 85% there, and we put the item level back to the exact same, and you can see the damage difference is nothing. As long as your damage buffs are the same as your power, it will essentially be equal. So whatever stats is higher is better. That's 7.5% if you use all the rating of power, and that's only 5% if you get all those stacks. And it's a bit clunky to get those stacks because it's too easy to end up consuming the stacks before you get to 5. And let's say you only got 2 stacks, you got hit, and they're consumed, you only get 2% damage bonus. So just keep in mind the risk guards are generally not so good on slower hitting classes because those stacks do expire after 10 seconds, and then you got to get them back. But it's real easy on the rogue. You're simply just doing a flurry of hits there, and you already got 20 stacks within like 1 second with Duelist Flurry. It's pretty nuts. So we move on to our feet, and here we have again 2 new pieces of feet wear that you could be using to give you offensive stats. You have the Serenade boots giving you up to 7,500 power, exact upgrade from again another piece of boots from in Avernus Hunts, and unfortunately it's not that great for DPS because we already have so much power and we're using the risk as our participation. Let's say I was to rejig things around and use, let's say, the petrified gloves instead to give me crit severity. If I needed that, then I might want to use these boots to give me that power. But since I don't need the power, I'm better off using these Forest Guardian raid cruises, which I do need to get my combat advantage rating up. However, if you're using an augment companion like the Owlbear Cub, then you won't need the rating at all, and you might want to use the Wasteland Wanderers instead to just give you 5% combat advantage. The other set of boots is the Sharp Long Boots. Now, they will be a bit like the Rusted Iron Leggings, but actually a bit worse on your side because they will lead to a lot more one-shots whenever you are critically hit. You're reducing your critical avoidance by 30%, meaning you're increasing the damage you take of a critical hit by 30%, and all you're doing is increasing your damage by 5%. Keep in mind again of the formula. You can see, let's say we put our power back to that and we reduce our combat advantage down by 5%. You can see the damage difference again is exactly the same. So if your damage buffs add up to that score, then 5% damage is the equivalent of 5% combat advantage, and thus you may as well just go with the Wasteland Wanderers. The item level difference again is so minimal that it's barely gonna make a difference, especially in scaled content. Again, those are from Hardcore Voss. The Forest Guardian boots much easier to attain. You just can complete normal Voss a bunch of times and buy those. And then we're going to move on to our neck and waist and arty set. So right now you can see I'm using the Mythalar set. And for an end game user who's managed to farm out their Band of Air, this is absolutely the best set to be using. If you don't have Band of Air, the Demogorgon set is pretty much the best as well. And you can see that set bonus here with the artifact. And we compare it in our sheet where we have the new set, which is the Dragonhide Choker being one of them, which gives us aggressive alacrity. Now, looking at those pieces of gear, you can see there are a bunch of those set pieces. There's 4 sets in total. They all give you different stats. This one, for example, gives crit severity. This one gives combat advantage, and this one gives crit strike. And then you have the waist pieces and the artifacts to go with those sets. And essentially, what you will obtain is this aggressive alacrity. Whenever you use an encounter power, you gain 2.5% combat advantage and 5% movement speed. So that adds up to a total of 7.5% offensive stats of whatever one you need for your build. Pretty good set, but for endgame, it just doesn't compare with the Mythalar set, with your Band of Air. So if you don't have the Band of Air, I would probably take this new set over the Heart's Twine with your Demogorgon's Wrath bonus, because all it will do is give you additional 5% damage. But then again, it will depend on class. It will depend on your encounter powers and how often you can use them. On a rogue, I like to use at least 2 of my encounter powers in series. So I would use my Wicked Reminder and then Assassinate, and then they're on pretty lengthy cooldown of like 13 seconds. And then we have another encounter power, which is our Path of Blades. So we would have to time it perfectly, because the big disadvantage with this set is it expires after 5 seconds. You could have 3 stacks, and if you don't gain another stack in 5 seconds, gone. All 3 stacks, and that's the percentage is gone. So many newer players will probably still want to go with the Demogorgon's Wrath for the 5% additional damage, very consistent to keep up and maintain. That's my verdict there. So we move on to our rings, and we do have quite a number of upgrades we could use, essentially mythic rings, as you can see a bunch of them here. You'll see a ring giving you up to 6% crit strike, a ring giving you 5% bonus against dragons, another one with 5% bonus to your encounters and 8% to your at-will damage. Now, you can also see an additional ring in the collections that would give 10% more damage to your daily powers. Now, are these rings worth switching out, let's say the Band of Air or the Red Eyes Glare? Well, I can straight up tell you, no way for the Band of Air if you got that. But many of you might not have that yet, and so these rings could definitely be useful. But which ones would I say? Well, you might be looking at that 5% bonus to encounter power damage or 8% bonus to at-will damage and think that's really great. However, I'd warn you, have a look at, let's say, an act log when you attack a dummy. This is me here for over 2 minutes attacking a dummy with a good rotation, 678,000 encounter DPS, not too bad. But we can have a look at the percentages of our different powers. And for us, right, Touch of Wind is 20% of our damage. Bleed, 15%. That only leaves Assassinate, which is an encounter power, 9%. We have Wicked Reminder, another encounter power, 5%. So that's a total of 14% damage to our encounters, plus Path of Blades, which is 5%. So we've only got a total of 19% damage. Less than 20% damage is our encounter powers. Our at-wills, we just use Duel of Slurs. That's 8%. So if we want to go and add additional 5% damage to our encounter powers, that's 5% of 20% of our overall damage. You're gaining, on average, a 1% damage increase to your build. That's horrendous for a ring to be only giving you overall 1%. Keep in mind, of course, this is a rogue. We do have pretty heavy hitting encounter powers, but the problem is we can't use them all too often. And you have all these other different bonuses that contribute to your damage, which aren't encounter powers, which aren't at-will powers. And again, at-will power, Duelist Flurry, 8% of our damage, 8%, add another 8% damage to at-wills. That's less than 1% overall damage bonus. And if you go look at 10% damage bonus to daily powers, you can see here, Shocking Execution, 6%. Add 10% onto that, that's a 0.6% overall damage bonus to our build. All those rings, garbage. Throw them in the trash. A good ring would be 5% bonus against dragons, because that would contribute to everything. That will contribute to your Band of Air, to your bleed, all these other things, most of them at least. And so that's not a bad decision. But in my opinion, the best ring that we have available to us now is going to be this Soothsayer's Ring of Absolution. It essentially gives you up to 6% critical strike. That's your crit chance, and that's up to a maximum of 6% when your hit points are full. It also gives Forte stats, which, not being the best, will actually contribute pretty well to overall percentages instead of just ratings. And otherwise, again, there's that Mighty Breaker's Ring of Elegance, just when you're fighting against dragons. It is only a 5% extra damage boost and it's situational. The other ring, which I would highly recommend, is the Red Eyes Glare. If you have the Band of Air, you go with the Red Eyes Glare, and then you go with the Band of Air. And you could, of course, switch that ring out to the Soothsayers, depending on your build, if you don't need the power or the accuracy. But keep in mind, the Red Eyes Glare is giving a total of 7.5% stats. That's higher than a 6%. So just keep that in mind. However, accuracy is kind of a dump stat. So yeah, And this red eyes glare actually comes from Voss, excuse the hardcore. You just have to complete it and get lucky on the end chest. So we move on to shirt and trousers. Here we have a new thing. We have shirt and trousers which make a set. We've seen it once in the past with like the Everfrost set, I believe, and you can see that when we do go and equip it, you gain that bonus there. I'll switch to the document, and it essentially gives you that Dwarven Resilience, 1500 power, crit severity and awareness. That adds up to a total of 4.5%. Compare that to, let's say, the Corroded Shirt, which gives us 5% combat advantage. 5% is better than 4.5%. And if you look at offensive stats, you're only gaining 3% offensive stats if you make use of the ratings. So I definitely recommend just sticking with the Corroded Shirt from your Dragonbone Veil. And that's what I'm doing right here by switching this out using it. And that just helps contribute to more of our offensive stats. However, we do have an upgrade for the pants. These define dwarven ones, and essentially they're like the velvet pants we've seen from crafting. However, they're now legendary, much higher item level, and they also give offensive stats as trousers, which is pretty rare. And they have a neat bonus of critical charge, essentially giving you action points whenever you, essentially critically strike at a 10% chance. And just a direct upgrade there with item level and offensive stats. And that's about it for my entire document. There'll be a link in the description below where you can download it for yourself or just view it online. And hopefully this has been somewhat insightful as to moving forward what gear upgrades you'll be wanting. But to sum it up, you can see all we're doing is getting 3 pieces of new gear, and that's it. DPS, there really isn't that much to upgrade if you have the Band of Air. If you don't have the Band of Air, you might very well want to switch to the new artifact set here with getting one of the new artifacts as well. And otherwise, you might want to get an additional ring here like the Soothsayers to go with your Red Eyes Glare from Vault of Stars. There are indeed actually 2 more rings I haven't mentioned that you could obtain just here in the first tab. Down here you have one that gives 4% additional damage to your powers when you're 50 feet or further away from your target, okay for ranged DPS, and otherwise 3% additional damage when you're 25 feet or closer to your target. So you'd use that instead of, let's say, the Red Eyes Glare or the Soothsayers if you didn't have the Band of Air. So with that said, again, hopefully this is somewhat insightful and helpful to DPS players out there as to what's coming with Module 23 and to know what you want to be going for when the module drops. Again, I'll be making an updated video on how to essentially get that gear ASAP in the new module by using multiple characters. So keep posted for that. And lastly, I'd like to give a massive thank you to all of my channel members for helping me keep my channel going. And if I presented this well, consider leaving the video a like. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.